Okay, sports fans, this is initial deployment. We're able to deploy 20 inches into the sides of the board. I have formed two Panzer IV short barrel spearheads right here, kind of a Y formation, so to speak. We got our corporate leader here, and I went ahead and positioned them right at the limit of the 20-inch deployment zone, kind of protecting the German headquarters. I basically formed a battle group here with my vehicles carrying my infantry, my shock troops, and supported by a Panzer III and the Tiger. So that will form my two flanks. And for the Brits, who also deployed it up to 20 inches in, I went ahead and formed a basically a 17-pounder shield, kind of protecting the base and kind of covering pretty much the whole middle of the board. They have a 32-inch range, supported by the Churchills, or I'm sorry, the Crusaders. And I'm holding these guys back. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them yet. I'm going to wait and see how this unfolds, and then I will deploy these honeys. I've got my Grants up the side, and now that I know where the Tiger is, we're going to definitely rethink what we're going to do over here. So what I'm probably going to do, since I've got my artillery and I've got my spotter, he went up to the 20-inch range. If he can at least get a spot down range, I'm going to definitely start popping some artillery right from the get-go, down range at this attack group that's coming up my left flank. I really haven't done much with my infantry groups. I'll be moving these three in this truck, at some point in the game when I see how things start to unfold. Obviously, these guys have absolutely no chance against the Panzer IVs, very little. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet with the Brits. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. We're getting ready to roll, see who moves first and shoots first. All right. All right, guys, we got some exciting stuff going on the board here. I'm going to go over it. First, the Germans moved and shot. They had one shot from this this right 88 downrange. You can see he popped off he got one. He got two shots. One landed on the Grant and took it out. I'll kind of show you what I'm doing with the Germans initially. The Germans had their first movement. So basically formed two firing lines. Since these are short barrels, the plan is I am going to fire artillery bombardments at those 17-pounders down there. If I take out one or two of those 17-pounders, at least on the left flank, to free up this left flank. But I've also moved up the Panzer III and Tiger as a team, and they've moved up to this right side of this oasis, and close behind are the infantry units in support. Now, the British have reacted, and I think what I've decided to do, I'm going to take advantage of the speed and just the numbers. I have got to take those 88s out on this left flank. That's where I'm going with this. So I move my honeys up in support of the Crusaders and the remaining two Grants, and I'm making them just go straight at these 88s. That will force this unit over here, this formation over here, to react and to stop them and slow them down. Now, I also have my spotter team here. So I think I'm going to get a few shots from the Crusaders at the 88s. Then I'm going to fire an artillery bombardment at the 88s. Alright, so I'm trying to take those 88s out, because those things 40-inch range, plus that 20 inches that they have off the edge of the board, they're going to put the hurting on me. I'm not going to be able to do anything up this left side with armor as long as those 88s are still intact. Right? So these guys have a 36-inch range, the 17 pounders. So what I've done is I've formed an attack group, another right flank attack group. I got my infantry, sorry. 2 groups of infantry are in support of this battle group. They're going to shoot up this right flank quickly, and it's going to force a reaction from the German Panzer IVs, which have basically formed a bombardment firing line. Because I'm in a tough position with these Panzer IV guys. About where that small shed is, maybe a little bit past there, is within range of these 17 pounders, and those 17 pounders will zip me up. I mean, they'll take me out. So those 17 pounders, guys, if you're building your British force right now, or you're just looking at starting to build your British force for the Desert War, you gotta have these. Just have to have them. I've been beating the Germans with these 17 pounders. It really keeps the Germans, if they can't take out these 17 pounders, it keeps them away from this taking this command center. So we're going to see what's going to happen here, guys. I'm going to roll off some British fire, and then I'm going to do a German move, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what the results are. Okay, guys. Afrika Korps moved up. The Tiger, the Panzer III, they both get 1 shot, followed closely by the infantry. Popped off a bunch of shots. We got obviously 4 shots from the 88s. We got 2 shots from both tank, well, from each tank, totaling 2, 1 each. And this is the result: bailed, 3 bailed out tanks. So the Germans didn't do too well. Artillery bombardment from Panzer IVs. I would say that is a bust. So it's a hard choice. Are you going to stick with shorts? Are you going to pay the extra 4 points for the longs and get the range? Because the problem with this, guys, is if I can't get more teams under the target plate, the template, even though I've got 4 tanks firing, I don't get any advantages till you have 5 units firing, which is kind of lame, I think, honestly. But no hit. I mean, there were hits, but the artillery teams, the 17 pounders, both saved. So I've got 8 tanks firing downrange at 2 positions. Now this is another tip for you new players. See how I spaced them out? I can't get a team on 2 teams under those templates, but they're within command distance. So that's an advantage for the Brits. Still skirting up the side here, guys. The Brits are up for their next move. And by the way, the Brits did nothing. We had some successful hits at that 88 from these Crusaders, but the 88 saved. So when the Brits fired last turn, they did nadja, no anything. And right now these 17 pounders are completely ineffective. At least firing is direct fire. I did get a bombardment off, since it's only 2 units down here. I had to re-roll my hit. I got a hit on that 88 to the left, but since I only have 2 units, I had to re-roll my hits, and they saved. The 88 saved. So yeah, it's not looking too good right now. There's a lot of pot shots going on, but not a whole lot of carnage. Alright, real quick, guys, I wanted to go over my British move. I finally got a successful airstrike, so my Hurricanes, both of my Hurricanes, are going against the 88s, of course. They'll be the first to strike. Then I'm going to follow up, since all 3 of my bailed out tanks did not get back in, which is pretty surprising. But I got a lot going on this left flank. The Brits have really thrown everything but the kitchen sink at the Germans' left, or the Germans' right flank. I thought I would take a daring maneuver. I've never used the honeys before. So what I'm going to do is I'm swarming the Tiger with honeys. So by at least next turn, I figure if he stands and fights, he's going to take 2 of the honeys out. 3 of them will get side shots next turn, right? I've got my Grant repositioned himself, the Commander Grant that's left. He's going to go toe-to-toe with the Panzer III. So that's going to be interesting. I still have my artillery and my spotter intact. So I'll use him as follow-up shots on the 88s. Because right now my main objective on that left flank for the Brits is to take out those 88s. Now over here on the right flank, I got my infantry units moving up the right flank as fast as they can, and I basically formed a firing line against this group of Panzer IVs, who basically have not done anything yet except waste some artillery shots. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Okay, interesting result, guys, with the Hurricane attack on the 88s. One Hurricane was destroyed, so I'm down to 1 unit of a Hurricane, but the other Hurricane took out the 88, so it was 1 for 1. It's a trade-off. Shots from the Crusader 2, no effect. I wasn't expecting these guys really can't do much to this Tiger from the front, but by next turn they will be all over him and swarming him. The remaining Grant over here, who's not bailed out, he scored like 2 good hits, but they did not penetrate. What else we got going on? The flurry of shots coming from these 2 units over here of Grants and Crusader 2s. Had 2 bailed out, 1 destroyed, so that was a good success over there. So the Brits did do some damage. So yeah, that was about it. I was really interested in the Hurricane attack because I forgot that as the Hurricanes came into the 88s, the 88s did get a defensive fire at the 88 or at the Hurricanes. So I don't know, maybe next time I would try hitting with my 1 remaining Hurricane unit. I'm probably going to go for these tanks back here because he doesn't have a clear line of sight because he's up next to this palm grove. So that would mitigate that 88 against my Hurricanes. So it's going to be interesting. It's the Germans' turn, and let's see what the Germans are going to do. Okay, after the German action, we had to form a little bit of a firing line. Since this guy didn't move, he got 2, 3, 4, 5 total shots. Basically, I had 2 shots from this lineup here since one of them did not get back in his tank. The result was 1 bailed out, 1 destroyed Grant. German 88 had a retaliatory strike on the Crusader, took him out pretty handily. Tiger only scored 1 successful hit, but the hit took out one of the tanks. So we got a Panzer III, got 2 hits, but he ended up only bailing this tank out. So that actually wasn't a bad result for the Honeys. Now the Honeys are going to be able to get some side shots. The important thing is they have bogged down these 2 tanks. They basically stopped them. Now the German infantry has orders to continue down the right flank to try to seize the headquarters. Take out the artillery and seize the headquarters. So that's about it for the Germans. Pretty exciting battle, pretty interesting. The short barrels really do level the playing field for the Brits. Their anti-tank is only 7 with the short barrels. So that's something to consider forming your armies. If you want the long barrels, you're going to have to pay for them. You're going to have to pay dearly for them. Alright, let's see if some of these British tanks can get back in their tanks and get in full operational order here and see what the Brits can do. Alright gang, some interesting stuff happening here as this German infantry group came up the British left flank. These Grants took out the vehicles We lost 2 infantry teams. Yeah, 2 infantry teams were killed in the process. 3 vehicles down. The infantry teams that survived the assault or the attack from the tanks now are out of their vehicles. We had also aided the tanks, whereas this 17-pounder over here, he took out a couple of vehicles on his own. And then we did try an artillery bombardment with my spotter, and artillery just could not range in. So there was no effect from the artillery, but at least that's drastically going to slow down the infantry coming up this left flank here. I don't know if I'm going to try to grab that infantry team and try to shoot them over here as a reserve unit. I just may do that. Hurricane bailed out a tank, so some success there, and the remnants of this tank group here did bail out another tank, another German tank. So there's 2 German tanks bailed out of that squad. They're basically ineffective right now. So yeah, the other thing I decided to do, instead of, it turns out that Tiger, his rear armor is still an 8. So I decided to move my full movement. They weren't able to shoot, but they're in position to take out this 88 and seize the headquarters. So now the Germans, for the German move, the Germans are going to have to counterattack, which means this group here is going to have to focus on these. If anything, it will redirect the Germans to this point for sure to protect their headquarters, while my infantry team skirts down the flank, comes behind that bluff, and can either do a tank assault or just shoot over and seize the headquarters for the win. So the Brits, it's looking like the Brits, they just might pull this game out. The Germans are basically put back on their heels. So those of you guys that are afraid to play Brits, I say play Brits. It's pretty balanced, I would say, pretty balanced, which makes for good fighting. So yeah, so there you have it. Now let's do the German move and shoot, and I'll report back to you. Okay, sports fans, Germans bailed or got back into all their tanks. There's 2 tanks bailed out. All 3 of them returned fire at this battle group, took out 3 tanks. If I can get, that entire battle group's gone, so if this guy gets back in, he's going to have to make a last stand check. So that flank basically just fell apart just in 1 turn, so that's how fast this game could turn, guys. These guys, as I predicted, the Germans basically moved to protect their base. They took out 1 of the honeys. They bailed 1 of the honeys. They couldn't shoot at these 2 honeys because of the 88's in the way, so that 88's probably going to be toast next turn. What else? The Tiger took out a Grant and bailed the other Grant. So that battle group over there has basically been shut down by the Tiger. Tiger is still a formidable force, obviously, but if I can get this infantry group around this side, but it's going to be a real stretch now because these Panzer IVs are still a viable force. Yeah, so I'm going to have to give this some thought. Oh, the Hurricane, oh, I already told you the Hurricane did bail 1 of those tanks, but he got back in. So the Hurricanes have been marginally effective, not super effective. They did take out 188 and bail a couple tanks. So yeah, at this point, guys, I don't know. I'm going to have to give this some thought. For the British move, I may turn the infantry around and just fortify the base and see if we can just hold out with the 17-pounders. Because the Brits we just don't have any more armor left. The armor has been decimated. So I'm kind of thinking about doing a defensive action at this point. I don't think it's worth bringing all this infantry up, even if they could successfully assault these German Panzer IVs, I've still got to contend with a Panzer III and a Tiger. I can simply just move back and annihilate the infantry. But I don't think the infantry can take out all 7 of those Panzer IVs. I just don't think it's going to happen. And then see, we still have this issue down here. The German infantry just keeps steamrolling forward. They're just on strict orders to take that base, so they're still moving towards this artillery team. So I can tell you the Germans next turn, he is going to... I'm gunning for that spotter team that's hiding behind that building. Right, so I'm going to take him out. So we'll see, at least we can bail in a couple of tanks. We got a couple of British armor that can get back in their tanks and start retreating back to the base for a defensive action. And see if we can just hold out and defend the British base.